Jumping into number 5 side of the top 5 ultra budget gaming monitors is the View Edge 24, coming in at a price tag of $89.99. If you guys want to check out any of the 5 ultra budget gaming monitors in this video, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. But let's talk about the View Edge, and yes, you heard that correctly. $89.99. This is a true ultra budget gaming monitor and it's so worth it. This has a 24-inch screen size with a 1080p resolution. And you might have thought it's low refresh rate, but you'd be wrong. This hits 165 Hz and has FreeSync. And after testing, this surprisingly has no screen tearing, which is kind of crazy at this price point. And for the panel type, where you might think maybe this is a TN or a VA panel to save money, no. This is an IPS panel, which means you're gonna get good viewing angles and colors and ghosting. So let's talk about ghosting. Once you turn on adaptive sync, which is variable refresh rate, it automatically turns the overdrive into the fastest setting, which is a good thing because there's only off or on. And once this is turned on, ghosting is significantly reduced, and while it is still present, it's so much better than 95% of VA panels out there. This is impressively good at 90 bucks. When I first saw this monitor, I was like, there is no way it's going to be as good as I'm hoping it's gonna be, and it is. It's so impressive. Brightness here is also way better than you'd expect, hitting 311 nits in SDR. For the price of this monitor, that's very good. HDR here is also pretty decent after doing that HDR calibration. It's a free app that you can download on Windows 11. It does get slightly dimmer overall, but the fact that a $90 monitor even has HDR capability is super impressive. Colors here cover 99% of the sRGB color gamut, and while it isn't very color accurate out of the box, the white balance here is pretty dang accurate. And for most monitors within anywhere near this price range, that's impressive, right? I'm not saying this is the craziest best monitor ever, but for 90 bucks, this feels like a way more expensive monitor than it is. I mean, 90 bucks is crazy. However, console compatibility here just isn't great. There's better monitors on the list if you want a console monitor. On the PS5, this can do 1080p at 120 Hz or 1080p HDR at 60 Hz, but there is no variable refresh rate for PS5. For Xbox, you can do 1080p at 60 Hz with variable refresh rate though, but no HDR, obviously. Xbox doesn't do that at anything other than 4K. But with that, let's move on to the number 2 spot, which is the Cori GN02, coming in at a price tag of $179.99. Here we're bumping it up to a 27-inch screen size, still with a 1920 by 1080p resolution. But now we get 240 Hz with FreeSync Premium, and is also G-Sync compatible, like all FreeSync Premium, and it works well. There's no screen tearing or anything weird like that. For the panel type here, this is a VA panel, and the benefit of that is it gives you a higher contrast ratio of 3000:1, so you get deeper blacks than on IPS panels. Ghosting here is definitely apparent though, as this is a VA panel, but after setting it to the fast setting, it significantly decreases the ghosting, and 90% of the ghosting is just in darker areas of the screen. This is, again, more common with VA panels. So if you're playing like Call of Duty or Battlefield out in the open and it's a bright day in the game, you won't really notice that much ghosting, but once you get into darker areas like caves or really dark insides, that's where you're gonna notice ghosting. It's not perfect, but again, it's ultra budget, so you have to make some sort of trade-off. Now let's talk brightness, because this does really good. It is so much better than I expected. This tested at over 390 nits of brightness. Now, one note here is that there is no HDR compatibility at all, which is fine because honestly, HDR at this price point is usually just a way to kind of like increase overall screen brightness if that's what it does, and maybe make colors look slightly more saturated sometimes. However, color coverage here is 100% of the sRGB color gamut, and it can output 10 bits of color at its full 1080p 240 Hz, but accuracy of the colors out of the box isn't great. The white balance is too cool. However, if you set this to either the movie, DCI-P3, or sRGB color modes, it gets very close to a 6500 Kelvin target. If you don't know what that means, it's basically just the whites are actually white, not like blue or orange. It's like how it should be. So either set this to movie, DCI-P3, or sRGB, and then you can play around with your brightness and whatever else you want to play around with. Now, while you do get deeper blacks here, because again, it's a VA panel, the colors don't look quite as good as some of the other IPS panels on this list. For console compatibility, you can do 1080p at 120 Hz in SDR with no variable refresh rate on the PS5, and for Xbox, you can do 1080p at 120 Hz in SDR, but you get variable refresh rate if you do have an Xbox. But with that, let's move on to the number 3 spot, and this is the LG GN800-B, coming in at a price tag of $196.99, though check the links below because I got this for a few bucks less than that when I bought it very recently, specifically for this video, because this monitor is fairly old, but they still manufacture and sell it. And that's why when you actually start using this, you're like, oh, this is actually a more premium product a few years ago, but now it's in the ultra budget space, but it's a really good value because of that. This is a 27-inch screen size with now a 1440p resolution. This hits 144 Hz and has FreeSync Premium and is also NVIDIA certified G-Sync compatible. That's where you're like, oh, this used to be a very premium monitor. For the panel type here, this is an IPS panel, and for ghosting, it is excellent here. The best setting is the fast setting, and in that setting, it is basically crystal clear. It is exquisitely low, even though the specs are just a normal 27-inch, 144 Hz monitor, and that's considered kind of like normal at this point. It does all of that extremely well. Everything is super polished, making the gaming experience very enjoyable without any weird bugs, ghosting, or really anything. G-Sync is always recognized immediately, and the brightness is good here. Everything is just like, it's a Swiss Army knife. It's as much of everything as you need. And that's why the GN800 at this price point is a great monitor. For brightness, you're getting 350 nits of brightness. HDR here is just okay, especially when you compare it to the SDR, which is just a much better overall mode. Even when I went through the HDR calibrator tool for Windows 11, the HDR just never looked as good as SDR, so that's what you leave it in most of the time. That being said, colors here look very, very vibrant, and this only covers 99% of the sRGB color gamut, so we don't have any wide color gamut coverage here. But in spite of that, it's a very, very pretty monitor. Accuracy out of the box is pretty bang on with the white balance. However, overall not perfectly accurate with the other colors, but at the same time, it's not that far off either. The important thing here is that it looks very pretty in game, and that it does well. For console compatibility here, this is a great console gaming monitor. If that's what you're looking for, this one's really good. For the PS5, this can do 1440p at 120 Hz with HDR, but no variable refresh rate. And for the Xbox, this is where it's very good. You can again do that 1440p at 120 Hz in SDR, but this time with variable refresh rate. However, Xbox only does HDR in a 4K resolution, but this monitor can actually downscale a 4K signal to 1440p, which means if you want to do HDR, you still can by downscaling a 4K 60 Hz with variable refresh rate and HDR. Although me personally, I'd be doing 1440p SDR with 120 Hz most of the time. But the fact is, you have that option. With that, let's move on to the number 2 spot. This is where they get really good. This is the Anosin 27G1S Plus, coming in at a price tag of $229.99. And that is the price at the time of filming with a coupon. So they have a coupon attached to it that's 30 bucks or around 30 bucks. Again, check the links below for current pricing. But this is a 27-inch screen size with, again, a 1440p resolution. But this time you get 240 Hz and is G-Sync compatible with variable refresh rate. But unlike the Cori 240 Hz gaming monitor, this one not only is 1440p, but it's also an IPS panel, and that translates into ghosting. Ghosting here is essentially crystal clear. It is extremely minimal. In-game, this thing is awesome. Not only is it one of the cheapest 1440p 240 Hz monitors you can buy, but it's also very well refined and tuned, which is something that is pretty uncommon for those two to go together. Colors look decent in SDR, but if you really want this monitor to pop, there's a trick to really get all that you can out of this monitor. And to do that, we have to talk about brightness in HDR, so let's do it. Brightness in SDR tested around 305 nits of brightness, which is very respectable considering all of its other specs. In HDR, the overall screen brightness gets a bump up to about 330 nits. And this is the trick. After using the Windows HDR calibrator, you need Windows 11 for that. This allows for the colors to be able to pop even more in game, which honestly completely changes this monitor's experience. While this only covers 99% of the sRGB color gamut, the beauty of the panel after using that calibration, well, it's not going to be perfectly accurate. Most of us in game are not really going to care. We just want it to look beautiful, and this thing looks awesome. Mix that with really good ghosting, 240 hertz, and it's an IPS panel, and you can do some legitimate, really fast-paced gaming with still a high resolution. Like 1440p in this price point is pretty high resolution. Now, if you thought that that was all the impressive stuff, the color accuracy out of the box, I think, is maybe the best on the list. This monitor is calibrated from the factory, and it is calibrated unbelievably well. The Delta E is very low, the white balance is pretty bang on, and the colors overall are very accurate. All of that makes for a really awesome experience. For console compatibility with the PS5, you have 1440p at 120 Hz in SDR or HDR, but you don't get any variable refresh rate. With Xbox, you get 1440p at 120 Hz in SDR, no HDR here, and has variable refresh rate. But with that, let's move on to the number one best ultra budget gaming monitor by far. This is the best pick. This is the AOC Q27 G3X-MN, coming in at a price tag of $279.99. And while that might seem like a lot more money than the previous monitors, this is by far the most premium and an extraordinary value. This is a 27-inch screen size with, again, a 1440p resolution. This hits 160 Hz with a 180 Hz factory overclock on DisplayPort only, and has FreeSync and is G-Sync compatible and works well without any screen tearing. The big thing here is the panel type. This is a VA panel, but this is mini LED lit with full array local dimming with 336 local dimming zones. If you don't know what that means, it means you're getting deep inky blacks because those zones throughout the panel are actually able to pull the brightness way, way down. So as far as beauty of a panel, this is by far the most beautiful panel on the list, and possibly one of the most beautiful monitors you're gonna see anywhere close to this price point. Ghosting here is honestly impressive for the price tag. In brighter scenes, ghosting is very minimal. There is more ghosting in the darker scenes, which is expected since this is a VA panel. However, for me, this was not an issue at all, and I still had a fantastic gaming experience on this monitor. The medium response time setting is what I recommend, as the off and the weak settings have more ghosting, and the strong setting has some inverse ghosting. But now, brightness and beauty of the panel. In SDR, this managed to hit a whopping 560 nits of brightness, which is absolutely fantastic. Colors here, well, we have wide color gamut coverage covering 96% of the DCI-P3 color gamut, which means in HDR, you're getting much more vibrant, beautiful colors. And then not just the colors, but you're also getting deep inky blacks. Beautiful. On top of this, this has an HDR 1000 nit rating, so gaming in HDR is really enjoyable. Colors in game look vibrant and saturated, and overall, this is an extremely impressive image quality. It is absolutely beautiful. For speed, obviously the 240 Hz IPS ones are gonna be better, but if really what you want is 180 Hz, which is still very, very good, and the beauty of the panel, this is the pick. For console compatibility for the PS5, this is compatible with 1440p at 120 Hz with HDR, but no variable refresh rate. This can also downscale 4K at 60 Hz with HDR, but again, no variable refresh rate. And for Xbox, this can do 1440p at 120 Hz with variable refresh rate, but no HDR. But if you want HDR, this can downscale a 4K 60 Hz with HDR and variable refresh rate. But again, if you want to check out any of the 5 ultra budget gaming monitors in this video, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. I have been hearing the comments you guys want even more budget, so I brought a lot of different picks. And that $90 monitor, if you don't have a high refresh rate monitor, if you're only stuck at 60 or 75 Hertz right now, and you just need a high refresh rate monitor, but don't have a lot of cash, you're not gonna go wrong with 90 bucks. That monitor is so impressive. All right, but if you enjoyed that and you wanna check out some of the reviews of some of these monitors, I actually have a few of these as full reviews on my monitor review channel, Type C Tech Reviews. You can check out that channel right there. I've been posting on that a lot more regularly recently. But this is a consumer tech review, and I'll see you guys in the next video.